This is going to be a video about adding an extension to an AC adapter, a power dongle, a power cord. What I'm going to be doing, I'll be using this wire over here. We will check that out in a minute. This video is about connecting your camera, whether it's a WISE camera or it is a NOOIE or whatever camera you have out there. All of these cameras are powered by a power plug, an AC adapter, and then you have the cord that wraps around, and then you get to the end and you don't have this plug. You end up with a plug like this, the mini, this is the micro USB, and this will plug into the WISE camera. This will plug into the NOOIE and I believe the Nest and all the other cameras, or most of the cameras out there. So the problem is that when you go to connect these cameras and you put them outdoors and you want to, hold on, I don't have this on the tripod. When you want to connect it between a wall, through a wall, you have a choice. You can drill a massive, massive, massive hole. Not so massive, but it's going to require some patching, maybe some caulking. So you might have to put your caulk in the wall. You might have to do some plaster repair, some drywall repair. If you attach this one, you're going to have a massive hole. They do sell, I don't know what they're called, the things where you can drill into the wall and then you push the cable through and then it's got a little plastic thing. It's a sealer. I bought one of those. The problem is it requires a 3/4 inch hole, 3/4 of an inch, to push this cable, to push this through, to push that plug through, and then you've got to file off the that plastic piece so that this hole connector will fit through, or you can jam this thing through. That's a lot of space, a big hole for a tiny little cable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this cable, and then I'm going to splice this wire in, and then I'm going to splice wire on both sides. The idea being that if all I need to do is drill a hole that's about 1/4 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch, and push the wire through. Now this is going to be up probably about 8 feet, so I am not going to put this through the wall of the garage or the building and then get up on a ladder and do the soldering and splicing. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to cut the cable, splice on one end, splice on the other end, and that way when I push the cable through the wall, all I have to do is wrap the wires together. If I want to get up on the ladder and tap it really fast with a soldering iron, that's doable. Or I can just probably attach it with wrapping the wires maybe. The wires in these things are extremely fine, very thin wires. A USB cable has 4 wires. It really has 5, but it has 4 wires. It's got a plus, a minus, it's a plus power, minus power. It's a 5-volt DC, and then you've got a plus data and a minus data. Most of these cameras are not going to be using the data line, so all you need to do is connect your power wires, which are normally on the outer ends. I'm going to show you that in a minute. And usually the power wires, if they do this right, will be red and black. We're going to check it out now. If you like my video, do a thumbs up, subscribe, like, share, comment. I will be leaving affiliate links in the video description, so if you click on those before you order from Amazon for anything, it will definitely help me out. So let's go check out the cable, find out what's going on with this thing, and then we'll cut it and do the splicing. I've got my meter over here. I checked it out. We've got the dongle plugged in, 5 volts. That's the connector. Let's try to get better lighting over there. Minus is on the far left, plus is on the far right. And what I'm going to do now that I know it's on the far right, not that it really matters, because we'll be able to cut the wire and figure it out. But plus is on the far right, minus is on the far left. There's the 5 volts. Since I don't have my fine probes, there's no way that I'm going to be able to get into the micro USB to do the test, but I will cut the cable right now, and then we will check out the wiring and the coloring of the wires just to verify everything before I connect this. On the micro connector, it follows the same thing. The power wires are both on the outside. The micro has 5 connections. This has 4 plus the ground on the outside, the shield, really the shield, not the ground, that you won't be using. The micro has 5, and as I said, power plus is on one side and the ground is on the other. The first thing you're going to see when you strip the wire, you can cut it, but I'm doing this so that you can see what's going on here. We have some braid that goes around this. All I did is I used, you can use some wire cutters, be very gentle, some wire strippers. But we have braid, the outer braid, which I am going to be not using. I'm only going to be using 2 of the 4 wires that are in here, as I said. So I'm going to cut the braid away so we can look at what's going on inside the cable. There is the cable. Now you've got to admit, drilling a hole for a size cable like this is a lot better than having to drill a hole, where is that, for something this huge. So what I did is, I would not use an X-Acto knife unless you're very good with it. You'll probably nick the outside of the wire. This stuff is very fine. I used some cutters. I kind of went on an angle a little bit, and then I went this way so that I could really show you what's going on here. We have the outer braid. Underneath the outer braid is a little layer of foil for to stop noise. So it's kind of spiraled around, and then we have the 4 wires that I told you about. We have the red wire, which is going to be the positive. We have the black wire, which is going to be the negative. We have the green wire, which is going to be the positive data. And then we have the white wire, which is going to be the negative data. If you want to connect all 4 of them, because you're not sure what they're doing, and if you want to just connect all 4, that's fine. If you just want to connect the power, you can do that. Your camera is probably going to work, 99% chance it's going to work. But if you want to connect all 4 of them, that is up to you. And that is why I've got this wire. I'm used to using military type wire, which does not melt when you strip it. I don't know how this is going to work. This is really fine wire. The reason I went with 22 gauge, this is definitely not 22 gauge. This is probably 20, I'm guessing this is 26, probably 20, 26, 24, 26, 28. I went with 22 because I wanted to have a much better connection. What I'm going to be doing is I will be cutting this in the middle. I will be putting a piece of heat shrink on this end. If you don't have heat shrink and you want to use tape, if you've got good tape, electrical tape is really messy. It's also going to make the hole much bigger. I don't want to make it too much bigger because I want to be able to drill the smallest hole necessary to get this cable through the wall. So I will heat shrink a little bit over here, a little bit over here. I will slice the wire in the center, and then I will strip the ends of the wire. I'll strip the ends of the wire over here. I will put heat shrink on one side of this. I will solder. I will heat shrink the other side and solder. And then what I could do is show you what the final result is, but I'm going to go step by step so you can see what happens. I've stripped this back extremely far, but that's okay. The cable is about 1/8 of an inch, so if you were going to be drilling a hole, you could probably squeeze through 1/8 of an inch hole, or maybe a little bigger. I've got some heat shrink over here. This is, I believe, 3/16. And you don't have to mess with this. If you don't want to do it this way, if you just want to cut the wire, strip it, wrap everything up with tape, that's up to you. I'm just doing this to make a good video for people that want to mess with this stuff. So the only reason I'm doing this is to protect the end of the cable, which I really don't even need to do, but I'm going to. I don't have my heat gun with me, so I'm going to try to heat this thing up as best I can. I did a video on some heat shrink that I bought on the internet. You know, you don't have to go through all of this. This is just overkill for what I'm doing. And if you've got a whole bunch of cameras, you probably don't want to do this. You might want to use some silicone or some type of something sealer to seal everything up. As I said, since I don't have the heat gun here, I'm just using the end of the soldering iron to melt the heat shrink as best I can. And it looks like we're good over there, and so I'm going to do this on the other side. And when I go and drill the hole into the building, I just have to make sure that it's big enough that I don't pull my heat shrink all the way back. The thing is that I'm going to have a nice bundle coming out here because I'm going to have 4 wires, maybe 2, 4 wires with heat shrink connecting to the other end, which is going to be this wire that I just showed you. What I've done is strip back the black wire and the red wire. I'm using thermal tweezers to strip this. This is really fine wire, very difficult to strip. The insulation melts. It melts into the wire because it is cheap insulation. It's not made for heat. It's made for a mechanical robot to do the stripping. On the wire that I'm going to be using, this is how I wish this was. This is definitely 22 gauge. This is probably 28, 26, 28. So the wire that I'm going to be using, this is 22. The insulation with thermal tweezers handled it fairly well. I would be cautious with mechanical when you're using wire like this unless it's made for thermal tweezers, because you're going to stretch the wire and the insulation unless you have really good strippers. So 22 gauge, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put a piece of heat shrink. I'm going to get everything even. I'm going to make sure that both of these are even for the red and the black. And then I'm going to put a little piece of heat shrink. I'm going to tin this wire. I'm going to tin this wire. That means put a little bit of solder on each end and keep the soldering iron low enough so that it doesn't melt the wire, the insulation, but that it does get on the wire. Then I'll pop a little piece of heat shrink way back here, tack it down, slide the heat shrink on, and heat it up. So here we go. There we go. I'm going to tin the wires now. That means tap a little bit of solder on the wire so that it will have solder on there to make it easier to connect. And this wire, as I said, is extremely thin. I don't know how well this is going to come out. My hand might be in the middle of, in the way of the camera. I don't know. Just a light tap over there to get a little bit of solder on there. Had to get a ball of solder. It really is not holding much solder. So this is what I've got. I wish that I had some flux. I wish I had additional flux instead of the flux that is in the solder. The wire is holding the flux, not easily, but it did hold it. And so we've got solder on both ends. And then the next step will be to put heat shrink on this piece. I might have to separate this a little bit so that I don't melt the heat shrink as I solder. And I will be soldering it. Where's the camera? Where's that camera? All I'll be doing is I'll be tacking this one end to end and then sliding the heat shrink on. I'm definitely not going to be able to show that on the camera, but I will show you what the end result is. What I've done, not the best soldering job, but I don't really have anything to hold this down now. I've put 1/16 inch heat shrink over this. This wire is about 1/16 of an inch with insulation. So it's going to be really tight. Maybe 3/32 would have been better. And I'll slide that up over, and hopefully I did my soldering good enough. Notice I cleaned the hands too. I'll get the heat shrink over both of these wires, and I did the same thing over here. I'm only going to be connecting the red and the black. I think that's all that I need for, I've got a WISE cam here and I've got a NOOIE cam. Again, this should work on the Nest and probably the Argo and anything else that uses the micro D to USB power cord. So let me slide these wires up, and then after that I'm going to be putting on a piece of 1/8 inch heat shrink, sliding it over everything so that it is all held together. That is the wire with the heat shrink shrunk on both cables. We're almost done. That is the 1/8 inch heat shrink, put over the two spliced wires on both sets. And now I think I'm going to take one more piece of heat shrink and I'm going to close this whole thing up, seal it up. I added another piece of 1/8 inch heat shrink right over the end of the first one, just so that I can build up the cable a little bit. I want to build up this side of the cable, and then I'll be covering it with a, what size is that? 3/16 that I'm going to show you afterwards. The additional piece of clear, the 1/8 that I said I added, has now been shrunk, and now I'm going to put on the 3/16. There it is. Let me get this in focus. That is the micro wire. This wire in the USB is very, very fine. Spliced to the 22 gauge wire that I showed you at the beginning, the red and black over here. And I'm going to show you what this looks like, the final, at the end of the video. But what I decided to do, yes, I could drill a hole. This is probably 1/8, 2/8, maybe 3, 1/8, 1, 2, maybe 3/16, maybe 3/16 to get this whole bundle through. But if I just push these two wires through and leave this part outside with the camera, it's black, it's not going to be noticed that much, it's protected, and all I've got to do is probably drill like maybe less than 1/8 of an inch hole to feed these two little wires through. And after I get the wires fed through the hole into, in this case it will be the garage, after I get that, all I'm going to have to do is connect the two 22 gauge wires, which is going to be a lot easier to solder or twist 22 gauge wire together than to have to mess with the micro wire, the very fine wire of the USB. So let me show you what I'm talking about and we'll finish off the video. Before I finish everything off, I just wanted to say the 22 gauge wire worked fine. It says 22 gauge, believe me, it feels like it's 24. It doesn't even look like it's 22. I'm not saying that it isn't, but it definitely appears to be much smaller than 22 gauge. After the insulation is removed, the wire looks very small, but it served its purpose. It's stripped fairly well with the thermal tweezers, and I'm glad that I bought it. It gave me more than enough wire at a reasonable price. So that's the review on the wire. Now let's finish off the video by seeing if everything works. Before I hook everything up, so this is the USB wire. This is the one that's going to plug into the dongle, the AC adapter, the power thing into the wall. And I left a lot of extra wire. I probably did not need to keep this much wire. And then I've got this wire over here. And you can obviously set it up the way you want if you're going to do this. And then, so this is going to be indoors in the garage or inside the house for me. Now, what I did over here is this is the part that's going to plug into the camera outdoors. And I have an enormous amount of wire. Why did I do this? Because I'm going to be mounting this under the eaves in the garage. And if I had made this wire, if I had made the splice really short, then I'd have to get up on a ladder and stand up there to do the whole soldering, which I don't want to do. So I've got a whole bunch of wire. This is going to go, this is probably like 10 feet. It's more than enough length to carry it from the hole under the eaves down towards the, even the floor, the ground in the garage, where I can go in there and do my splicing. And obviously the splicing is just going to be these two wires. So I made them really long, so it's going to be very easy for me to do. If you want, you can put these on a connector, a mating connector on here. You could put a wire terminal where you could just attach the wires and connect them with a piece of wire so you don't have to mess with solder. So I'm going to plug everything in right now, and the moment of truth, does it work? Hopefully the video's helped you out a lot. I'd appreciate a thumbs up, a subscribe, a like, a share. If you want to support me, ask for my PayPal info. If nothing else, please click on the affiliate link in the video description before you put in any of your Amazon orders. It will help me out. You don't have to do this this way. This is just another way to do it. takes a little bit of time, but if you have the skill, if you want to learn the skill, if you want to mess around, experiment, this is a fun thing to do. So let's see if it works. Hey everybody, that is the NOOIE Cam. That's the curtain. It's the camera in the background, plugged in. Let me show you my hand over there. Where's my hand? Do you see my hand showing up in the camera? There it is. So we're live right now. Now let's go disconnect the NOOIE wire and connect this big mess over here and see what happens. Okay, here's the moment of truth. This is just wrapped around. I don't even know if it's going to power up. We should hear a sound in a minute if the camera is getting power. I don't even know if it's getting power. So the camera is turning around like any NOOIE camera would because it's a NOOIE 360 camera. Well, let's go get the cell phone. I don't know if you just heard that sound in the background, but that's the sound that NOOIE makes when it has paired and connected. So let's get on the cell phone. I'm not sure if it worked. Let's see. That's the curtain. I'll move my hand over there. I'll move my hand away. I'm going to move my hand again. I'm going to move my hand away. So what you see here, people, is this is a difficult way, but a very doable way to connect your camera indoors to outdoors or through a wall. And all you are going to need, I got to be really careful because that's not insulated yet. All you need to do is drill a tiny little hole, probably 1/8 of an inch. 1/8 of an inch, so if it's outdoors, 1/8 of an inch, you put a little bit of caulking in there, you get your caulk in the wall, and seal it up, put some drywall compound if you're indoors, and in no time you're going to have a really nice connection for your Nest camera, for your, I don't know if this would work on the Ring, for your Nest camera, maybe for the Ring, for the Argo, for the NOOIE, and for the WISE camera. I hope this helps everybody. Thanks for watching, people.